News presents a platform with presence in over 30 states of the Federation. Be sure to be had. For live coverage of events, we have the capacity to deliver from anywhere in Nigeria and beyond. Contact us now on 0803 471 8550 or 0803 724 9733 014 533 407.
Our 24-hour news station.
On the 22nd of July this year, which means a few days ago, the Federal Ministry of Health was alerted on a suspected case of Ebola virus disease in Lagos. And this involved a 40-year-old male who traveled from Monrovia in Liberia to Nigeria on Askai Airline via Lome, Togo. This passenger arrived Lagos through the Muritala Mohammed Airport on the 22nd of July this year. He presented with fever, vomiting, and diarrhea on arrival at the airport. The Port Health Division of the Federal Ministry of Health quickly isolated the passenger and transported him straight to the hospital, avoiding contact with the general public. The patient was subjected to thorough medical evaluation, where laboratory investigations were also carried out. His blood sample was taken to the advanced laboratory at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, Luth, which confirmed the diagnosis of Ebola virus disease. This result has since been corroborated by other laboratories outside Nigeria.
Professor Onyebuchi Chiku there, Minister of Health, talking about the 40-year-old Liberian who died in Lagos recently of Ebola virus, which is our topic for today on Core Digest. Ebola, the scare, the worries. As I have my guest, Ebola Oba. Now, you saw the minister talk about this gentleman that came in from Liberia, and then the minister ruled out the possibility of closing the Nigerian borders, because some are saying, well, let's close our borders, let's close our borders. I think that was an initial reaction by a cross-section of Nigerians. I think it was a spontaneous reaction. Let's close our borders, because that would be far-reaching.
Close all the airports.
Imagine.
Close all the...
the seaports as well.
When you have about 2,000 plus points of entry and exit into Nigeria, and we man less than 300 points out of the 2,000 plus.
Over 2,000?
Over 2,000 plus. There are places along the borders of, Nigeria and Republic of Benin, between Lagos and Ogun State, that I know people go out since I was a boy in Mushin. We had always known people go out.
Okay, you grew up in Mushin.
I was born there. Okay. And you see, we know of points we know of places where the living room is in Republic of Benin and the bedroom is in Nigeria. So how do you close borders across the border? That's not effective. It's just one of those things people call for when they're in a state of paranoia. And let's be very honest with ourselves. Technically, we have not heard of any proven case of Ebola being found in our direct neighboring countries. Not in the Republic of Benin, not even across the Republic of Benin, not in Togo, not in Niger Republic, not in Chad, not in Cameroon. So why should we just go into full gear paranoia and literally put ourselves into a state of utter incommunicado? it's not necessary.
Now, growing up in Moshi excites me now because I want to look at the low-brow areas in Nigeria. Now, the campaign against Ebola is beginning in earnest, and it's fantastic. Now, what about the people in the low-brow area, the hoi pollou, as we said earlier, who do not have access to the type of communication and information that will carry this message of prevention of Ebola? What happens to them?
No, you'll be surprised the level of public enlightenment and public awareness that people have in such places. You know, we tend to not quite appreciate the degree to which people are information savvy these days. The first set of notices I've had about Ebola came via the phone for me. Text messages, WhatsApp messages, BBM messages, and whatever. And to be honest with you, the enormous amount of information being peddled on such platforms towns the conventional, what the conventional media organs are giving. So I don't want to sit here and want to believe that in most of these densely populated inner city neighborhoods or areas, they just live in a state of information anemia. No. Information circulates and circulates well amongst people. And you'll be surprised the degree to which an average uneducated market woman will tell you about Ebola if you were to just to take your cameras and your this thing and go talk to them at those points.
Maybe I'll take that as an inspiration from you to do a feature on that one of these days on Ebola.
It's necessary anytime.
To go to downtown.
Anytime. You know, to be honest with you, yes. Anytime there's a breaking issue, after having sought the opinion of those who should know by virtue of maybe what they do or by virtue of their circumstance or their role in society, it behoves people in your trade too. I used to be what you are now.
Wow.
It behoves people in your trade too to interact with the consumers of that body of information and see how they are reacting to it.
I see. Now, how can you prevent Ebola? Let me quickly drop this with you. There is no vaccine to prevent Ebola. To get that straight. People can avoid catching the disease by not traveling to areas where the virus is found. Well, I don't know about that. Healthcare workers can prevent infection by wearing masks, gloves, and goggles whenever they come in contact with people who may have Ebola. Well, usually an outbreak starts when someone comes into contact with the body fluids or waste of infected animals or persons, such as monkeys, chimps, or fruit bats. Once a person is infected, he or she can then spread it to others. We're saying it's highly contagious, and that's why it's very important for you to take good care of yourself, watch your back, and avoid contact with infected people as much as you can. Airline crews are trained to spot the symptoms of Ebola in passengers flying from places where the virus is found. Crews are told to quarantine anyone who looks infected. So it's important for you to look healthy as much as you can. Get enough sleep. Don't be like some of us. Get enough sleep. And so you do not look sick when you go out. And so you do not get quickly suspected to have Ebola. Now, you can get Ebola by coming into contact with the blood or body fluids, as I said, of an animal or person who is infected. People often get sick with Ebola when they care for or bury a person who has the disease. Someone also can catch the virus by touching contaminated needles or surfaces. So we're not saying be spooky, but be very careful. That's important. What are the symptoms of Ebola? These are the symptoms to look out for. Symptoms of Ebola virus show up 2 to 21 days after someone is infected. As the virus spreads through the body cells, now it damages the immune system and organs. Ultimately, Ebola causes levels of blood clotting cells called platelets to fall, which can lead to severe bleeding. Now, many of the early symptoms of Ebola look like the flu or other mild illnesses, which include fever, headache, muscle aches, sore throats, weaknesses, general weaknesses of the body, and then diarrhea. As the disease gets worse, people who are infected may develop bleeding inside and outside the body, body rashes, trouble breathing, and what have you. Now, it's important for you to be cautious, be on the qui-vive, and ensure that you protect yourself as much as you can. Bella, self-protection.
No, just do the intelligent things. The basic symptoms have been identified. You want to be wary, getting too close to somebody who is manifesting these symptoms. But there are some sociological things that I have not quite read from any of these materials.
Okay.
I was in Abeokuta day before yesterday. Yeah, day before yesterday I was in Abeokuta, and I went to a place where I get, whenever I'm in Abeokuta, I take the privilege to go have good begri at Iwedu and amala there. And you see, one of the first questions that was asked when I got into the quote-unquote, not the conventional eatery, but the eatery, one of the first questions I was asked is, you know, in times past, I would have opted for Eronogbe, but I said emphatically that I didn't want Eronogbe in this instance. I said I didn't want Eronogbe in this instance because, come to think of it, the record in the public space as regards the emanation or the origination of Ebola was that it was one of those viruses that that does the species jump or leapfrog thing. Originally discovered in bush animals, chimpanzee, bats. These are some of the animals that people eat in Africa. And you know, and I know that in Nigeria too, these are some of the animals that in some of our cultures we eat easily.
As delicacies.
As delicacies. So at this juncture, you want to be playing down on eating wild animals that you don't know the origin of, because you never know what's the distance between the subregion and infected animal, in one of the neighboring countries could have, you know, crossed the borders, and we don't even know the, you know, epidemiology of the wild diseases cross borders in the wild. So you want to be very careful not to be taking all this best stuff now. Two is that if you have a member of the family that is sick and the symptoms are looking in the direction of what, you know, what's been put in the public space as Ebola. The, you know, conventional symptoms of Ebola, you want to make sure that without necessarily not being responsible to your filial or familial responsibilities, you know, of care to that, the familial duty of care to that person, you also heed the advice of the professionals that you should not get to this to make sure. Where we are now, until about 2-3 months after the case of this Liberian man, we cannot say that is the only one-off incident we have. Reason being that the manifestation takes between 2 to 20 days before it gets this thing in an infected person. So we are yet to hit the 20-day mark now. So our healthcare practitioners and the authorities in charge of healthcare should still be on the alert. And I know they will be on the alert because they released this body of information for our consumption. But I haven't said that. You see, one cannot say it well enough. One cannot overstate the fact that people should not be paranoid. People should not be in a state of unnecessary fear. It's reasonable to be at alert. It's reasonable to be careful. It's reasonable to be, but you see, being paranoid is not part of what is needed.
Okay, now, but I'm naturally gain conscious, profit conscious, business conscious, and each time there is an issue of public concern, I'm quick to think of the economic implications. A Liberian came to Nigeria for whatever reason. We know that Nigeria is a very hospitable nation, and of course, a very economically active state to be in. Now, people from all over the world come to this country. They come to Lagos and other parts of Nigeria. They go to Bayelsa, they go to Abuja, they go to Cross River, they go to all parts of Nigeria. In the case of the Liberian
man, he was actually transiting in Lagos. He was on his way, he was said to be on his way to Calabar.
To Calabar, imagine. For whatever reason. Now, people come into this country for different reasons, to do business, for instance. What's going to happen to the business landscape, the economic landscape of Nigeria for the next few weeks and months because of this report?
Not until the phenomenon gains momentum, people will still do what they have to do. And why am I saying that? You may be shocked that the name of Ghana is not being mentioned regularly in the Ebola triangle in West Africa. But Ghana recently suffered one or two instances of Ebola. You know, Ebola, this thing, where the victims died. And Ghana is so not too far away from infected countries. Like, look, we've not heard of any incident in, at least I have not heard of any incident in Ivory Coast, which is a natural border to Liberia, but I've heard of an incident in Ghana, or one or two incidents in Ghana. And Ghana, as we speak, is not in a state of commercial comatose. People still fly to Ghana. Am I making a point? So I don't see where we are now. I don't see people avoiding to come to Nigeria because of one single case of, one single case of a man who flew into our jurisdiction with the symptoms of Ebola, who eventually kissed the dust in our country. God bless his soul, and our distant condolences and well wishes go to his family members
and dependents,
and people who are related to him and people who feel his loss. But I don't see that practically putting us in a state of
commercial economic comatose.
Yes.
Okay. Ebola, the scare and the worries. Experts too, medical experts are talking, not only the Minister of Health, but other medical experts are talking about this. Watch this visual, and when we come back, we'll still take on Balauba. Don't go away.
First of all, talk about border monitoring, quarantine, if any, and not only that, we talk of preventive measures, so that people don't just use the habits of not knowing they should need to wash their hands. They should need to avoid overcrowding. They should need to also see if new travelers are coming in and you're feeling funny, for example, that you need to see a physician, at least if need be, to do one or two things to make sure this is not a new case being reported. But by and large, we have a standing ethics in this type of situation. We allow the Federal Ministry of Health, we allow those in charge of epidemiology, we allow those in charge of disease control to do more authoritative instructions in this situation than just any of us coming out to say anything. But our duty is to just talk like the public physician who will really tell people, look, this is how to prevent this, this is what to do, this is what not to do. So the application is like general application to what you call communicable diseases, that kind of a thing. General application, preventive measures. You know, you avoid all of things like contact with suspected persons, you wash hands, you make sure you're traveling and make sure you get a clean slate when you're going. You get to where you're going to, they can screen you, you have suspected cases, you report them. But like I told you, the epidemiology unit of the Federal Ministry of Health, for example, and the various states are working day and night to make sure we're on top of this situation.
Okay. So Nigeria is indeed on top of the situation. You heard the medical expert there and saw him. So medical experts and institutions and governments in Nigeria at all levels are working hand in glove to see that Ebola is indeed overcome in Nigeria. Now, earlier on, the minister spoke about traveling sick being avoidable or being something to avoid. How avoidable is traveling sick anyway, especially across borders, not just locally now? We spoke earlier about traveling sick locally. You're on the bus or something, or you're in the canoe, you have to travel sick, how to take care of yourself. But if you're traveling international, you're flying and you have to fly sick. How avoidable is that, Bola?
You see, in many respects, in very many respects, the safest form of transportation, you know, is flying, air travel. Yeah. And in many respects, I mean, beyond just the safety of the craft. Look, if you have to travel internationally, there are a number of protocols guiding international travel. You are not supposed to travel sick except there is a medical report allowing the journey. Indeed, it is only when you are travel via the plane that you get to be asked at the point of destination if you have done the requisite pre-travel healthcare regimentation.
Well, hold that thought. You continue, but hold that thought. I agree with you absolutely. That's the formality. But you and I know that people travel sick all the time.
But you and I know that once there is a state of alarm as we are in, somebody said, one of the professionals that addressed us said, even airline hostesses and crew are now have been intimated with the fact that they need to be vigilant. Immigration and customs officers and healthcare infrastructure or healthcare operatives at the airport will be in a state of vigilance. So even from the point of embarkation, you are being subjected to visual examination, looking at your conduct before you board the aircraft. My brother, this is a time when I know that the Nigerian operatives will not fail the system irrespective of how easily they can be bribed. Between the chain of people who will observe something untoward, you cannot bribe all of them.
Okay, now, Ebola, global concerns are poverty.
But you see, my fear is people also cross the border using vehicles.
Of course.
So we really want to enjoin our transporters at this juncture that the level of care, the level of observation, the level of this thing should be heightened too, because majority of those, I want to believe, majority of those who may actually test the integrity of our infrastructure, our healthcare infrastructure, may likely come in with one Ajegboro from one of the neighboring countries.
All right, having said that, well, global concerns are poverty, global warming, HIV/AIDS, and terrorism. 4 major global concerns. Wouldn't you say Ebola is making this 5?
You said global, but Ebola is not global. Ebola is regional. Even on the continent of Africa, we've only heard of cases of Ebola in 2 of the 6 sub-regions of Africa. You know, Central Africa, 2 of the 7 sub-regions of Africa. Central African region, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, and on the west coast of Africa now. Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone.
Yeah, I got you.
Sparse cases in Ghana, and you understand what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. I'm only saying now. I'm saying, isn't it making it? Because I know that it hasn't spread to other. I know. What I'm saying is, because now that we're aware that air travel exposes other parts of the world to this as well. That's my concern. That's why I'm saying, don't you see it, maybe I should have said, don't you see this becoming the 5th global concern? Don't you see this becoming the 5th global concern? Because air travel predisposes other parts of the world to it.
Air travel predisposes other parts of the world to just about anything, because people do, these days, people do longer flights, 18 hours, 20 hours, from one
or more,
from one end of the world to another end of the world. You're right.
Lagos to Australia, for instance.
Lagos to I don't think there's any direct flight from Lagos.
No, of course.
I don't think there's
South
any direct
Africa,
flight from
Lagos to South Africa and then Australia.
You know, you could even say South Africa to Australia, South Africa to New Zealand. Those are what we have as reality now. You can do Lagos to New York or New Jersey and whatever. Yeah, those are things we have on the table now. But you know, we have also stated that within the context of these scenarios are mechanisms to identify, alarm, and call for attention. Before you board a flight, people will see you. You will go through basic airport checks and exercises. Once you are aboard your flight, people will see how you generally. Why is it that majority of drug traffickers caught at the points of destination were observed in the flight, and the authorities at the other end were alerted by the crew? It's just because some things are normal human behavior. Some things will be untoward when you manifest them. And when you manifest them, the people who should see and say will see and say. I'm not paranoid, to be honest with you. I want people to be careful. I want people to be cautious. I want people to be knowledgeably defensive, but I don't want people watching us to think it's time to eventually be the recluse they want to be, because other factors of life are beating them to a state of giving upness. Am I making a point?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a trained psychologist. I am not a public, encourager per se.
But you're not doing a bad job of it either.
But I believe that we are not at a point yet where somebody will just say, hey, tomorrow morning, me daddy. It's not gotten to that yet.
So you do not see Ebola leaving the shores of Africa? That's what you're saying, in essence.
We have heard of an instance of a professional who took care of one of the victims manifesting the traits of Ebola and eventually dying when that person got back to North America. I've read of an instance like that.
Oh.
I've read of it. But subsequent to the demise of that professional, we have not heard of fellow travelers in the ship through which he traveled. And when I'm using ship here, loosely.
Metaphor.
In the aircraft through which he traveled, I've not heard of any one of them developing symptoms of Ebola or eventually, dying through Ebola. Am I making a point?
Absolutely.
So that is why I am cautiously optimistic where I'm seated that we may not hear any negative development of the story subsequent to the demise of this unfortunate Liberian gentleman, because we've heard of instances in the past when people flew long haul. In fact, flying West Africa, I think the longest flight I've ever done in West Africa is about 4 hours plus. You know, and we're talking long haul to places like United States of America from West Africa, and somebody eventually manifested the full-blown symptoms of Ebola, died, and none of those who shared the
cabin,
you know, of the flight with him, of the plane with him, passed from the. So we must be very careful. Yes, we need to be informed, but we don't need to throw it all up.
We need to be informed, but we don't need to throw it all up or throw in the towel, and there's no need for getting paranoid about this. Ebola is here.
I almost said you were calling Bola. It's not fair.
And I must also say I like a sense of humor, really.
Thank you very much for the compliment.
So,
I take that as a compliment.
Yes, so Ebola is here, but then Ebola is something that we all will work to overcome. And it's not a hard task.
Let me give you a little story laden in Oma.
Yeah.
Just about when Ebola broke some years ago, I think I was still in England, and you see, I would processed my name, my first name, Ebola, and Microsoft this thing was telling me it was, you know, typical red line under, and I just out of curiosity. Normally you just tell your this thing to accept it, but out of curiosity I just clicked the right side of the mouse, wanting to know the alternative. Yeah. And one of the alternatives that came out was Ebola, and I shot it.
Imagine.
You're making fun of me now. This is
not exactly.
This is not fair. Okay.
Well, that's something to really douse the tension if you're out there watching us. Ebola is there, but then it's something that we will all work to.
Ebola is there, life goes on.
Life goes on.
Enjoy the beauty of relationships.
I'm telling you.
And lead your life. You know, don't be paranoid. Life is, like you said in your prologue, fantastic. I thought I was listening to a poet. Enjoy every moment of life as though it's a gift. Yeah. And it's indeed a gift, because it's a gift from Providence. Yeah. Providence, like you rightly said. Some didn't wake up this morning, and not because they were healthy, not because you were healthier than them yesterday, or not because you were you were richer than them yesterday. No, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Let's, you know, I want people to be cautious, but I don't want people to be so alarmed that they just get
spooky.
Unnecessarily.
So we'll say a big thank you to you for watching. But I must say thank you to you for making the show today, despite the short notice. I must say thank you to you. If you weren't here, where would you have been now?
Where would I have been? I would have been reading, preparing for my afternoon. There's an afternoon radio program I do on Radio Continental that I'm part of. You know, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. I would have been, and I normally go through the papers, because the host of the program, veteran citizen Jones Hussein, could just pick any topic of the day and run it by you. I probably would have been. And now that I'm loaded for Ebola, and this is Ebola anyway, going to be attending to Ebola.
So thank you for watching. It's on behalf of the entire production crew that I say thank you to you for being part of the show Court Digest this Sunday. I'm Tolu Ojewumi. Have a great Sunday.
You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website, www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime News.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.